If you want to hike long distances over multiple days, one of the most important things you can do is eat enough protein. Protein is key for repairing your muscles and keeping you ready for the next day of hiking. Unfortunately, high protein meals are not the most backpacking friendly. So that's why I'm going to share 5 different ways that I bring high protein backpacking meals with me deep into the bush on a regular basis. But first off is just good old-fashioned meat. Meat is the most bioavailable and complete source of protein that you can consume. The only problem is that carrying ground beef or raw chicken breast with you into the bush on a week-long hiking trip is not exactly ideal. However, one thing that I like to do if I'm just going for an overnight hike is bring frozen meat with me. And that's our first protein meal idea. And the best thing about this idea is that you can do it with any kind of meat. I've been successful doing this with everything from burgers to salmon fillets. And it works extremely well. You can pack any kind of frozen meat with you in the morning, and by the time you get to camp at the end of the day, the meat will be defrosted and ready to eat. If it's a really hot day, you can even pack it next to a frozen water bottle or inside an insulated cooler bag. I've done this on a full day of hiking in 40-degree weather, and 6 hours later when I got to camp, the meat was actually still frozen. This is a very broad meal idea and works with so many different kinds of high protein meals. Burgers, salmon, steak, chicken breast, pork chops, anything you can come up with, you can freeze it and bring it for a simple overnight hiking trip. Now all that is fine if you're just going for a simple one-day hike, but if you're gonna go for multiple days, you gotta get a little more creative. And that brings me to one of our cheapest protein options, which is canned chicken. Now this can be a little off-putting to a lot of people, and understandably so, but if you fry it up with the right seasonings and sauces, you can make it taste delicious. And if you're desperate, this can also just be eaten right out of the can, and it doesn't really have a strong flavor at all. But my favorite way to use canned chicken is to boost a meal with protein. You can easily add it to soups, ramen noodles, and rice, and it won't change the flavor of the meal at all. And that's why I much prefer canned chicken over something like salmon or tuna. Even though canned salmon is quite tasty, it can be pretty pricey as far as canned meats go. And even though canned tuna is really cheap, it's also really hard to mask the flavor of it if you're adding it to another meal. And that's why canned chicken is one of my go-to ways to boost any kind of camping meal with some extra protein. Now the third way I like to bring protein into the backcountry is with beef jerky or biltong. Beef jerky and biltong are by far my favorite ways to bring protein, but they're also the most expensive. But it really is the best option because you get all the great benefits of a clean and complete protein source, and you can bring it with you for days on end. And also, because it's dehydrated, it's super compact and lightweight, which makes it perfect for backpacking trips. Now, chewing biltong all day can get a little exhausting, so one thing I like to do is cook it with rice or noodles. This allows the biltong to rehydrate and get soft again. And from there, you can easily add some sauce and vegetables and make a delicious backcountry stir fry or pad thai. Although beef jerky is definitely one of the most expensive options, if you live in Australia, you can still find it for a reasonable price. I always get mine from a company called Barbell Foods, which comes out to around $10 a meal, and you get 40 grams of protein, all from high quality grass-fed beef. Next on my list is protein powders. These are super convenient and they usually taste great as well. I typically go with whey protein because I find it the quickest and easiest to digest, as opposed to something like casein protein or a different plant-based option. Now with this food, just like all others, it's important that you test it out before going out camping or hiking. You want to make sure that foods agree with you because being out in the wilderness is not the time or place to be getting sick. Getting sick when you're miles out in the backcountry is not a fun experience, so it's definitely not the right time to be experimenting with new foods. So with protein powder, you can obviously just shake it up in a water bottle and drink it that way, but my favorite way to eat it is by mixing it with oats in the morning for breakfast. And the best thing about protein powder is that if you get creative, there's an endless possibility of things you can make with it. There's protein muffins, protein granola bars, protein pancakes, and that's just to name a few. One pro tip is to mix a little bit of powdered milk with your protein powder. This adds a few extra calories and gives it a much creamier and smooth taste. My favorite brand of protein is called the Steak Shake. Not only does this have whey protein, but it also has egg protein and a bunch of desiccated organs for added nutrients. And even though it has all that stuff in it, it still tastes the best out of any protein I've tried. Now the final protein source is something a lot of people overlook, and I don't think people know that it has a lot of protein in it. And this item is fried pork rinds or pork crackle. These snacks are typically just fat and protein, and a small bag can usually have 30 to 40 grams of protein in them. Not only are they packed with protein, but these snacks are also super lightweight, which makes them ideal for backpacking. The fat they have is also a great way to replace much needed calories after a long day of adventuring. They're also very salty, which helps to replace a lot of the lost minerals you would have had from sweating all day. They often come in a variety of different flavors, and they're great for snacking on the trail. Just make sure you have your water handy because they can make your mouth extremely dry. The only issue with this snack is that the bags do take up a bit of space, but you can always poke a hole in the bag and let a little bit of air out, or crush them into a powder if you want to go that far. So those are my 5 favorite ways to boost my backpacking meals with protein. I try to focus on protein as much as I can, especially when I'm doing long bouts of physical activity. So when I'm out hiking, I try and get protein any way that I possibly can. Let us know some of your favorite protein options when you're out backpacking in the comments below, and tune in next time for another adventure.